All right. Welcome, everybody. This is the SIG Network meeting for Thursday, May 17th, 2018. And the first item on the agenda is testing review, but also just kind of a general reminder that the 111 code freeze appears to be June 5th. That's not really that far away. That's about 2.5 weeks away. And so if you have outstanding issues or PRs, you might want to try to get those reviewed as quickly as possible. There are also some other deadlines for issue tagging and features and things like that. I've added the release schedule in as a link into the agenda document. And before I forget, I will also paste the agenda document link into the Zoom chat so that everybody can follow along if they don't have that already. Pasted now. So yeah, get your stuff in order if you have things to get in. Do you have any other comments, Tim, about release coming up or anything like that?
If anybody's blocking on me or mine for PRs, let me know. I'm working through my backlog still. I revisit it every day or two, but I revisit it in size order. So if you sent me some small PRs, they should be taken care of pretty quickly. And if you send me XXLs, well, you're going to wait.
Also, I think you said, Tim, a while back that it's good to have an LGTM on PRs already so that you know that somebody's done a sanity check on it. So.
I love getting a PR that's already had an LGTM. That's not necessarily required, but if you really want to get through the process faster than getting somebody else like Dan or Casey or Minhan or the whole community of people who know what the heck's going on to look at it first, that helps me out a lot.
And feel free to ping me directly, either via Slack or email or something else on PRs as well, since the GitHub notifications are somewhat sporadic sometimes.
Yeah, that's for me too. If you want me to look at something in GitHub, you have to A, assign it to me, and then B, ping me somewhere so I see it.
Yep. Also, make sure that your PRs don't have red on the labels like release notes. Write your release notes.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, let's jump into the test dashboard. I could try to share my screen. Otherwise, I think this might be pretty quick. We can run through these. It's looking a little bit better than last time. I think we last met and went through this about a month ago. I put some notes into the agenda on some of those. The GC Flannel and Core DNS ones also seem to be the same as last time. They're stuck in other code from other SIGs. Does anybody know what we could do for those next steps on those? Do we need to try to coordinate with SIG CLI or something like that to try to get those failures addressed?
I haven't looked at those failures. What are they? Do we know what they are?
Let's see. They are, it's test cases and code that is marked. See the Calico stuff. Okay, sorry, we're not looking at Calico here. Just CNI Flannel. Let me try to share my screen really quick. We'll see if this actually works.
It looks like it works.
Okay, excellent. All right, so CNI Flannel, if we take a look at the latest run, oops, it's not what we wanted to do. Well, okay, so Tim, if you see here, if you're looking at the my screen share,
yep.
There's a specific test marked SIG CLI, and those are the ones that seem to be failing. There haven't been any failing that are SIG Network specific.
Okay.
So
I know they're tagged SIG CLI, but have we taken apart the failure to convince ourselves that it's actually them and not us for some other reason?
I feel like we have in the past, but we could go through that again, I suppose, and take a look.
I would say, I guess, before we go and annoy other SIGs, I'd probably like to be confident that it's not actually us through some backdoor way.
Okay, fair enough. Does anybody have some time to look at that?
Anybody?
Yeah.
As always.
I'm traveling the first half of next week, so I can't. I can try to take apart. I can try to take apart one tomorrow. There were like two, right? Three?
Um,
I
yeah,
see red on like 5 or
there's
6.
a couple of them. The upgrade and downgrade stuff, we're not quite sure about yet. I think some of those are the same as last time, more or less. I've spent a little bit of time looking into the upgrade proxy DS, and it looks to be about the same sort of thing, but it's a little hard to figure out what's really going on there. So if you see in my screen share, I'm kind of noting what we came to as a conclusion last time. But I will try to dig into at least the upgrade proxy one more, and just try to figure out whether that's ours or whether it's not.
All right, I'll try to take a look.
I'll take one. I'll take the second one. Looks like it should be simple. Kubectl run should create an RC from an image.
Okay, so which one exactly were you talking about, Mike?
If you go back to your display of kubeadm GCE CNI flannel.
These?
Oh gosh, that's small. I was back in the test grid.
Okay, I will jump back to the test grid. There we go. Is that better? I'll try to.
Move from the summary to the kubeadm GCE CNI flannel.
Got it.
Right, second one down there. Kubectl run should create an RC from an image.
Got it. Okay. So you'll dig into this one and try to figure out what's going on. Okay.
Basically, let's just convince ourselves that it's really not ours, and then we can get SIG CLI or whomever involved. I just don't want to be a pest without making sure that it's really not us.
Yes, that's reasonable.
Which one were you going to try to look at, Tim?
I don't know. Now, can you just assign me one?
Sure. Let's see. We've got some of the ingress ones too here. The ingress GCE E to E. Is that
those, we can ignore those completely. Those are for us mainly.
Okay, fair enough.
They're not release blocking.
Francois, do you know what those failures are in the GCE core DNS one?
Well, no, I can have a look, but I think it's more equivalent to CMI kernel. But I can have a look for the core DNS one. Core DNS is on 2 of the tests, so one is okay, and the other one is some dynoid.
Okay. At some point, we're going to start taking a harder line of like, we're not going to merge anything else until we get all our test screens. So I understand that everybody's busy, but we got to keep the hygiene up. Otherwise, the whole thing grinds to a halt.
Yeah, actually, maybe I misunderstood the granularity of assignment here. I think you put me down for a bigger category than I thought I volunteered for.
Well, how about this, Mike? Just start with that one, and let's see where we go with that. Let's try to root cause the, run RC should create an RC from an image thing, and see where you go.
Okay.
Don't root cause it. Just convince yourselves that it's ours versus not ours.
Yep.
Yes.
Good point.
And then root cause it.
Yeah.
Those are passing today anyway. So.
All right, so at least we've got a few. Let's go with that. We're 10 minutes into the meeting. See, we didn't get you one, Tim. You volunteered kindly. Okay, you know what? Do you want IPVS? Oh, wait, those actually are our problem.
Yeah, I'll bring that up in a second.
Okay. I mean, if you want to look at the downgrade, Tim, although I feel like downgrade and upgrade are probably the same issue, but it doesn't hurt to take a look.
Probably, but let's clear it.
Yep. All right.
Cool.
All right. I will stop screen sharing. Okay, so next item on the agenda is IPVS GA.
Okay, so this should be short. I just wanted to get some clarification from everyone on how we correlate tests flakiness / failures with going GA. So there's two particular ones. If you look at the IPVS tests, you can see they're not really flaky. They're kind of failing. And I just wanted to clarify that stuff like that needs to be fixed before it goes GA.
I think that's a reasonable position.
Yep. And I kind of skipped that during the test grid review because I was assuming we would get to it during this discussion as well.
Okay, so I think then it's pretty clear that that's a must-have to fix, right?
Objections to that general position?
None.
I want to see the flaky test because the CL now seems it's okay.
I mean, it's gotten a lot better, obviously, but there's definitely
Like if it flakes 1 in 10 times, I can sort of live with it. If it flakes 1 in 2 times, it's probably not okay.
and this is 50.
So can you let me see the flaky test? Can you show me the flaky test? Which test?
Do you have enough?
Sure. Let me jump back to my screen share really quick. All right, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, it should be up now. So all of these are tagged SIG Network, or most of the ones.
Yeah, clearly there's some green in there, there's some red in there, so.
Yep. I mean, it looks like...
This test is result. I don't
Sorry,
think
you
so.
cut out there.
Why so many tests? So many.
I mean, it looks like a large number of them are just periodically flaky. But then some of the top ones here, the top 2, for example, are probably fairly consistently flaky. But then the other ones, like networking granular checks and such, started passing 2 days ago.
Yeah, there was actually a PR that caused a major failure among a lot of tests, but that was fixed, so.
Okay.
If you look before that big blocker red, it was kind of the same deal as what you see now.
Got it. I forget, how long does it take for the red tests in the middle here to flip back to green? Do we need like a week or so of
Actually,
success?
I think it's one. I think it's one green run.
I think that is configurable. For now, it takes all the past tests in the history. If you have red, then it kind of shows up as red. But that's configurable. We can fix that. Like we can say, like if it passed like last 10 times, we're gonna make it red. We make it green.
Okay. Would the IPVS people be able to look into at least the first 2 tests in this display and try to figure out what's going on there?
Yeah, my team will look at it, but it seems a bit strange from my side because I haven't seen so many flaky tests. Yeah, I will look at it. I'll look at it.
Thanks. I would love to get this wrapped up and tell people they can really truly start using it.
Yeah, this is it. So once this is all good, then you can unlock for GA.
It's huge. Big deal.
Okay, so just to be clear, we'd like to get those the tests and the test grid for IPVS green, and once that happens, we're okay with GA. Do we need any other changes for IPVS? Anything with documentation or anything like that before we declare GA?
I would like a little more maybe troubleshooting help, but that's something I can discuss with you guys offline. It's not a big deal. It should be like a 1 hour work.
Yeah, that was something somebody brought up for me last week too. When this goes sideways, how are people going to know how to debug it? There's a couple of docs out there on how to debug through the IP tables implementation. It would be nice to extend those into how to debug through the IPVS implementation.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Great work, guys. It's a long road. KubeCon Seattle, I'm buying the beer. Or maybe Shanghai.
All right. Anything else on IPVS?
Okay.
If not, all right, Core DNS, you're up.
Okay, thank you. So I just give a status. I will share my screen. We had a meeting maybe 2 weeks ago with Tim and some folks of Google to see how we go for GA for Core DNS. So it was decided that we go GA, but not as default service for Kubernetes. So that is now changed into the KAP. One question for Tim is what now to get the approval of the KEP?
Did we split it to a second one to move to default? I don't think I saw the cap for the second part.
Okay, so we wait the second one. We need the second one to be approved. The first one. Okay.
Yeah, I think then once we split the two, then we can say that it's clearly delineated.
Okay. All right. Then did you see that the guys that manage the deployment, the kubeadmin deployment tool, they choose to go GA and default right now.
Okay.
And they already merged the PRs.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm still the debate around whether the binary lives in your space or our space and who builds it and those sorts of things is still ongoing. It's a very tricky conversation, but it's looking like the general consensus is leaning towards getting just some processes in place specifically around security releases, like across projects, making sure that the Core DNS project has a security process if there's a bug or something that is compatible with the Kubernetes overall security process, and making basically that be the bar. To that end, you'll see some email from like Justin Santa Barbara, and he was looking at the build and the security policies and things like that.
So to be clear, what will happen here? We are waiting. Someone will send an email to say how to process.
Yeah, we'll have some discussions about what happens if a user reports a security bug in Core DNS that we need to turn around with an embargoed patch and build it into Kubernetes and put out a Kubernetes release before the announcement date, for example, right? Like this happened recently with the DNS mask issue, right? And Kubernetes has I think a fairly reasonable process in place for the core Kubernetes repo, and so and associated repositories, and we're able to do it for the kube DNS. I want to make sure that when that happens again, we can do it with across projects.
Okay, so that means for GA, we'll continue the same way to deploy the image.
Probably. That's the way things are looking right now.
Okay. All right. Else, so for KubeUp, we still have one PR to produce. I guess we will send maybe Monday, Tuesday, a way to upgrade using the cluster upgrade.sh. I have one question here. Is that way to upgrade is used in production, or it's only used in the end-to-end test? Does someone know that?
The KubeUp stuff? The
upgrade with KubeUp.
Cluster. I don't think it's used in production. I think KubeUp itself is more or less deprecated.
Okay. So because it was asked here to have a way to upgrade the config map from KubeDNS to Core DNS, but there's no use case in the end-to-end test anyway. So I'm not sure that's very useful.
Okay, I don't know who would. Did I ask for that?
No. Okay. I understand it's not used. I understand it's not used in production. Okay, I will take with that.
That's my understanding. You might poke the cluster lifecycle SIG just to be sure, but I'm pretty confident that it's not being used. It's not. I don't think it's being maintained well. So
is the upgrade even used at all in the end-to-end tests, or is it just installed?
It is used in end-to-end test, but there is no end-to-end test in that case that that take a config map of kubedns. That's what I mean.
Right.
It is using end-to-end tests. Yes, I verify that.
Yeah, and we saw some weird things like, you have to set, if when you do the upgrade, you don't set the environment variables to the same thing they were when you did the install, it like reverts to its defaults. So it doesn't seem like it's, like you said, maintained very well or really a very clean process.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that nobody's actually using it in production. I know we're not.
Okay.
Okay. And then, so what we have now is we send a bunch of peers for the perf test DNS that was asked for core DNS, and end-to-end test for config map, and a scalability DNS specific test. So all these PRs are out, and we are waiting some reviews here.
Okay.
After, I don't know who, I try to ping each time who can help. But so if you're interested in that way, please contact me or ask me to go into that, to add you in that PR. And I think that's it. On another hand, I have a long time, maybe 3 months, IPv6 end-to-end test for core DNS. I upgraded the IPv6 end-to-end test for DNS, so that includes kubedns and core DNS, except one is not working with kubedns, but that's kubedns. And I don't know how we go ahead with this IPv6 end-to-end test. That's not really linked to core DNS GA, it's another thing. So I don't know, IPv6 is going GA, or it will be released on this, with this release of Kubernetes?
V6 folks, Dane?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, it would not be going GA. Our hope is to bring it to beta. There's a PR out for the IPv6 CI test that's been out for about 2 months now. But I would imagine that once that is merged, that you could take what's there, that we use the Mirantis DIND on a GCE instance. You could take what's there and add some core DNS IPv6 tests to that. Would that make sense? Okay.
Yes. Well, I mean, we already have, there is a PR, but we can make it rerun and verify that is doing good and resend the PR. Yes.
Who is assigned that V6 testing PR that's been open for months?
There are two. There's two assignees. There's Mr. Han and Q Lee is the other person.
So we'll get somebody assigned to it. We'll get someone assigned to it. 2 months is not a good place for it to be sitting.
Yeah.
Apologize. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. I should be pushing. We also I had been pushing for a while, and then we were waiting for Mirantis to come out with a stable branch, and now we're using their stable branch, and I was gonna start pushing that myself. So let me ping them again, Tim, and if I don't hear from them in the next couple of days, I'll ping you.
All right, and we'll make sure we get it assigned to somebody who can make the time to review it.
Dane, can you drop the PR link into the agenda doc?
Sure.
Or tell me what the PR number is, and I'll do that.
I'll add it in chat.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I have my. Let me just check one thing. I have upgrade, end-to-end test switching review going good, and we have the scalability test for DNS. That's okay. So what I understand is we have to push this KP for default, so we can have the approval on this one, the KP. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda, we have a demo from Doug and Tomo.
Yay, demos.
Cool, and Corral too.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to share the screen. So, Doug, Dan, could you your screen sharing?
I think it was Francois. Hey,
Okay.
Francois, do you
Sorry,
mind?
sorry.
Oh,
No
that's
problem.
okay.
Sorry.
Where that is, stop sharing. Oh.
Okay. Okay, can you see my slides?
Yes, looks good.
Okay.
Looks good to me. All right, thanks for giving us some time. I'm Doug Smith with Red Hat, and I'm joined today by Tomo from Red Hat and Karal from Intel, and we'd like to demonstrate for you our reference implementation of the specification put forward by the Network Plumbing Working Group that is for multiple network attachments in Kubernetes. We're going to try to rip through this demo nice and quick and keep it short and sweet for you guys. So if you don't mind saving your questions for the end, or better yet, if you have even more detailed questions, you can bring them to our regular meeting. Tomo, you can hit the next slide, please. Thanks. Cool. So the Network Plumbing Working Group, this was formed this past year at KubeCon in Austin, Texas. And we're currently addressing multi-networking in Kubernetes. Initially here, we're defining a de facto standard CRD. So that's a custom resource definition that you use to extend the Kubernetes API. That'll be used for attaching multiple networks to a pod. The multi-home pod story has been going on for a good couple years at least, and we've formed this group in order to unify the efforts of the community, both in their proposals and their implementations. Our specification is becoming more and more stable as time goes on, but we'd love to invite you to come participate in our meeting that happens on alternate weeks of this meeting in the same Zoom meeting room, the same time of day, everything. So please come on along to discuss and especially to help us out with our implementations. We would much appreciate it. Next slide, Tomo, thanks. So our standard that we've been working on is trying to help normalize the user experience when you go to express your intent to attach multiple networks to a pod. So this lets the user be agnostic to the technology that's used behind the scenes and gives them kind of a congruent experience if they move between technologies as well. The specification as it stands uses kind of a sidecar network. So you're still attached to a default network that typically be pod to pod, and then you add other attachments to networks as sidecars to this. Our current implementation is a meta plugin. So that's a CNI plugin that can talk to other CNI plugins. And the implementation, as it stands, is out of tree. So it's not in github.com/Kubernetes/Kubernetes. It stands on its own. The goal of this implementation right now is to move this specification forward. And it's just one reference. Anyone can make an implementation based on this spec. And the implementation doesn't have to necessarily be a meta plugin. Our specification is written in such a way to allow a creative use of this specification. That being said, our implementation builds upon the work that's been done for Multis CNI, and I'll hand it over to Karal to take that one over. Thanks, Karal.
Thanks, Doug. So why we choose Multis for the reference implementation? Because Multis is fairly simple CNI which supports multiple networking, and there is no need to add additional plugins or the code to make it work. It's very generic, and it does only a single job, that is multi-networking, and it reuses the concept of delegates, which is the funnel also does the same thing. And in addition to that, it also cached the network information during the creation, and it reused those information for deletion. For some cases, what happens, like if the reference network object is deleted, or the config file is moved or is changed, so it makes sure that it releasing or deleting the particular network resources. And it's this project is quite stable, and it's already in field trial and in production for NFV use cases. So next slide, please. So we divided the reference implementation into two parts, phase 1 and phase 2. So in phase 1, we're targeting basic functionalities such as looking at the validation of pod annotation and CRD objects. And the reference implementation does not change the philosophy of Kubernetes networking, that Kubernetes assumes that all pods can communicate with other pods regardless of which host they lands on. All pods in Kubernetes can communicate to any pods. So in this phase 1, we provided an option called default networking. So we hold the default networking options for all the nodes, so that any pods can talk to any pods inside the container, inside the node. And the meta plugin is just provides you additional network. So that's the only job it does. So Multis is the one which provides you the additional network. So the current implementation supports 3 modes. The first mode is you have CNI config JSON, that is the network object. So you can put all the CNI information as a JSON format inside the network object. And second one is basically for the SIG plugin. So SIG plugin in this case could be Courier CNI plugin or ODL. So in which you don't need to specify any CNI configuration. So it does its own job. And the third one is, which is the interesting one, is providing the CNI configuration storing on disk file. So you can store all your CNI configuration as a JSON, as a file. So you just need to mention the network information of that particular file. So the meta plugin or Multis will find that network object for you. And phase 2 is kind of additional or extra feature implementation. This phase 2 comes with some fancy features like providing IP request and MAC request to the plugins, so that Meta plugin could find whether this particular IP address, for example, Tom has developed the IPAM called static. So in this case, the user may request for a particular IP address, and a Meta plugin check whether it's getting the particular IP address or MAC address or not. The second use case is to add the network attachment information back to the pod annotation. So this is the use case could be used for the network telemetry, so that in future if someone is developing some network scheduler, they can make use of this information. And the last option is to optimize the code and refactor the code. That will be done in phase 2. So Tom, this is for you.
Okay. So there we are showing the demo. Then these demos materials is available in the example directory in the Multis GitHub repo on the network pumping working group branch. I mean this one. So you can click the network pumping working group branch, and then so you can running the Kubernetes cluster using the any tools, which is the Kubeadom or Minikube or Kubeansible. So I'd like to show the demo scenarios about that. So on the left-hand side, we have a YAML file for network CLD, these two files and the pause definition. So we can using the kube control to put these YAML file in the actual object. And then in the pod creation, network CLD object, so for example, the MAC VLAN or Flanel, is used as a reference to create networks in addition to the default network. So in this demo, the default network is the Flanel. Now when pod is created, maybe it's like this workflow. The kubelet invokes the runtime, and the runtime the CNI plugin, Multis, and then CNI Multis invokes the master the default network plugin, and then after that, looking the Kubernetes API, and then it checks the CLD object, and then create the child minion network plugin. That's the case. So in this demo, we're running the CentOS pod simple pod with several networks with default network. Maybe the one is the MAC VLAN, and another is the funnel, and the VLAN is also in the target. And here is the demo scenarios and the demo networks, which is created in the demo. There is 4 MAC VLAN configuration, and then 1 VLAN configuration, and then VLAN configuration is sitting in the NetDNS1 namespace. It's a different namespace. And then the last is the funnel. This funnel is different from the default network. So currently, this demo contains the 2 overlay networks. And then the IP address is assigned as the static. And the YAML file is available in the CNI network pumping working group branch, and example / network pumping working group demo 1. And here is the pod file, which is used in the demo. We create the 4 pods. The pod case 1 uses the MAC VLAN, and then this is a simple annotation style. And the second uses the JSON annotation format, and then creates the 2 interface, MAC VLAN and the VLAN. And the VLAN interface is renamed as the VLAN 1-1 from a different naming convention. The pod case 3 is we have a 3 interface, MAC VLAN config, 2 interface from same network, and then we also create the funnel 2 interface. This is the secondary funnel overlay network, and then this funnel is read by the from a file instead of the CLD object. And the last case is the just regression. The without the network annotation. Okay, let's go to the demo. You can see this demo as the YouTube as well. But okay, can you see my movie?
Yes,
looks good.
Okay.
Looks good.
Okay. Okay. Here is the 1 master node and 3 node minion node for Kubernetes. Then the pod is working fine. So I just putting the multi-CNI branches to get the example YAML. Then here is the network CLD definition. And then this is same as the default standard draft. Then create the CLD definition, as well as the some several related information. The cluster role or namespace. Then the namespace is also created, and then we create the MAC VLAN network object, and then VLAN and the funnel. And the funnel running the another funnel is pod, so we create the new pod. Then, so here we get the kube control, get network commands, gets the funnel and the MAC VLAN definition. This is in the default namespace. So the VLAN is not shown because VLAN is under the testNS1 namespace, different namespace. Then we created the 4 pods as I mentioned. It takes a little bit time to leaving time. Now, okay. Though at that time, 4 network, 4 pod is available. So here is the master node EthernetOne interface. Is different than the usual ETH1. Okay. So now I enter the pod case 1. In the port case 1, here is a YAML file. At that time, we create the MAC VLAN configuration. Additionally, with the default network. At that time, we create the 2 network interface. One is a 0, and then another is net 0. Net 0 is the additional network. So this is a MAC VLAN. If 0 is a default, so this is Flannel B ether. Then the Ether1 master node, the route to the Ether1 master node goes to the MAC VLAN interface is the net 0, and then ping works fine. Okay, let's go to the another case 2. And then at that time, we check the VLAN interface of a master node, and then we enter the podcast 2. In podcast 2, we created the another notation style, I mean the JSON, and to create the 2 interface is created in addition to the default. So there are 3 interfaces will be coming. One is the MAC VLAN, and another is the VLAN sitting in the test NS1, and then the interface request changing the interface name. So currently default child networks named as the net 0, net 1 or something like that. But so you can changing the interface name using the interface request. Okay, let's see. Okay, okay, let me. Okay, so here is the Ether0, this is the funnel, and net 0 is the MAC VLAN, and the VLAN 1-1 is also created. VLAN is the VLAN interface. So in here, you can see the IPD output, the VLAN at the bottom, you can see the VLAN protocol 802.1q ID1. This is the VLAN interface. Then the route to the Ether1.1 goes through the VLAN interface, and then pings works fine. Then the third case, we can using the reading the file from the another's Maltus directory. So here, so we put the Flannel.-2 files in the HZCNI Maltus netd as a 10 Flannel-conf. And then in the annotation as the podcast 3, we are naming the Flannel-2. This is mapped. This is mapped to the this Flannel-2 name. So the Maltus CNI reads this name Flannel-2, and then this Maltus reads the file from HCNI Maltus netd, and then we can create the Flannel configuration. So here is the Flannel-2 interface in the master node, and then go to here. Here is the IP address output. So the net 0 and the net 1 is the MAC VLAN interface, and the net 2 is the Flannel. You can see net 0 and the net 1 is the MAC VLAN interface, and net 2 is a B ether, which is given from a Flannel. Then check the route for Flannel.2 at the master, goes to the net2 interface of the port, and then pings works fine. Then last case is just simple one, I mean the usual one, with there is no network annotation. At that time, we can see we can usual interface output. It works fine, and then that's it. That's the demo. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Tomo. And yeah, just a reminder that feel free to come and follow up with us. We'll hopefully go deeper into this demo during network plumbing working group meetings, and we'll have some more feedback there. So if you want to get into the nuts and bolts, if you want to get it up and running, feel free to come by and get in touch with us. Thank you guys for letting us have the time here.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thanks, Doug, Tomo, and Corral. Does anybody have questions on the demo? We've got about 10 minutes left, so maybe we can take a few minutes for questions, and then after that, hit the last item on our agenda this week.
Nope. Okay.
All right. Thanks again. All right, so last agenda item. If my computer would actually work, I could tell you what it was. There we go. Okay, let's see. Can SIG Network leadership request to have a session at future KubeCons for BOF?
The lack of BOF at KubeCon was. You there? Sorry, I was mute.
We can hear you.
The lack of BOFs at KubeCon was noted and has been raised as a point of consideration for future KubeCons.
Awesome.
I agree. I think that it's a useful tradition.
Cool.
All right.
So let me throw out in the last couple of minutes, there's been some chatter on the mailing list about the network service mesh proposal that Ed Warnicki wrote up. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at it. I found it to be a very interesting proposal. The slides on their own were a little bit difficult to crack for me. But I got a chance to sit down with Ed and he explained some more of the thinking to me. And I actually found it to be sort of interesting from a approaching things from a different perspective point of view. I would like to get him, I don't know if he's here on the call, but I'd like to get him to talk more about it at a future meeting here, because I think it's an interesting model that solves some of the multi-network problems in a different way that I think it was worth looking at and understanding.
I'm also having trouble cracking the slides. Tim, if you could maybe summarize briefly what you felt was revelatory and not in the slides, that might be helpful.
The thing, so first of all, the name is the worst name ever because it really has nothing to do with services nor meshes. But the main proposal was, imagine for a second, this is my straw man proposal. I don't know if Ed's here. He'll probably get mad at me.
I'm here, but go ahead.
All right, let me see if I can do it in justice. The way I'm picturing it is this. Imagine for a second that pods start with no network. There's nothing. And what you get is a file descriptor, and over that file descriptor, you can request access to networks. And those networks might be provided to you in the form of a virtual interface, which is what we do by default today. But they might also be provided to you in one of some number of other interfaces that aren't necessarily IP-based interfaces. And they might be memory interfaces or other things. This gives VNF-style applications who really care about networking the opportunity to do really interesting and crazy things with networking while still satisfying the base assumption of basic pods who simply ask for the network. The challenging part for me is that we have to find a way to make it really simple for simple cases and then possible for crazy cases. Anyway, so I think that was the main rub of it was treating network attachment as an API, not as a static thing. Ed, tell me how far off your mark I am.
Yeah, that's a relatively good first swag past it. I mean, one thing I do want to be sort of clear about is my current thinking on the subject was leave what's working about Kubernetes networking alone entirely and deal with this for the case where people have sort of enhanced networking needs. I think part of the observation also is that please attach me to a network is only one kind of a network service you might actually want. Often people implicitly have all kinds of other things that are being done for them there. And you basically shove that entire problem off when you are just knitting together L2 segments or things of that nature. And so having a method that would allow you to do those simple cases simply, but also allow you to do the harder cases with a complexity that scales like the complexity of the thing you're trying to do is a very serious goal here. And I would be delighted to come talk to you guys about it whenever it's convenient for you guys to put anything on the agenda. So yeah, happy to help.
Yeah, so I found the chat that we had at KubeCon to be very informative and helped me understand it a lot better. I would love to get the broader group's perspective on it. So maybe we can sign you up for an upcoming meeting.
Yeah, 2 weeks from now works if you guys have the time. I noticed you were very busy today, so.
There's nothing on the agenda for 2 weeks, so you can be the agenda.
Cool. So I'll slap something down there and put a sort of a spot on a block for time. We can figure out what we can chop that down to make room for other business, because I do realize there are important things like getting the IPVS and the core DNS stuff done that need to take precedence.
All right, thanks. Was there anything else in the 3 minutes we have left?
Hi, this is Kural. So we have put some proposal on the SRV network device plugin. So we have seen there has been a lot of discussion about how to do the network allocation, either through network device plugin or through the CNI. So last network resource management working face-to-face, we had a discussion with the team and Dan regarding that, and we got some ideas how we could have kind of a relationship between both the device plugin and the CNI. So we developed kind of a shim CNI which could able to communicate with both the device plugin and the CNI. So it could be a perfect match for the network allocations for the finite networks like SRV. So we developed a prototype model on that one. So if time permits, for the next meeting, we can put some slides and the demo as well.
Thank you for bringing that up. I opened up the doc and started reading it and realized it was going to require more brain power than I had on the first half of this week.
Yeah. So we included the NUMA awareness feature as well in that one, because if you have CPU and the SRV NICs, both should be in the same node to get high performance stuff. So we included that one, which we will showcase maybe in phase 2 releases. So it's a combination of NUMA manager, CMK, main CPU manager, and also the NIC. So it combining all the stuff together. So that's why the proposal looks like 13 pages actually. But if you look at the block diagram, it's very simple actually.
Okay, I promise I will make time for it and read it, because I opened it. It was interesting, but I didn't have the time to finish it properly.
Yes.
It did, however, it meshed with this. I sent out a slide deck trying to capture a little bit more of this concept of, I had asked sort of which forms of connectivity people were actually expecting to support through the multi-network problem. And I got some feedback on it, but not a ton. I would ask if people have a few minutes to go through that deck. It's in the archives for the mailing list. I'm trying to understand when it comes to multi-network, especially when it comes to multi-network and devices like SRIOV, how are people actually wiring up their infrastructure? Because I think that's going to inform the evolution of how we are able to describe what is available on a given node. So I've seen 3 or 4 different proposals now of how to manage multi-network. from a node? How do you say whether the blue network is available on any given node or not? And how many access points to the blue network there could be, and those sorts of things. It could get arbitrarily complicated. I'm trying to find the sort of minimum viable set that services the requirements that we actually have. And I do not believe that the requirements must support everything under the sun. So if people have 5 minutes, please go look at that slide deck and tell me, like, A, if it makes sense. So thank you for all the people who helped me to clarify the deck. And B, like, which of these cases, if you care about multi-network, especially if you care about device-oriented multi-network, which of those cases you actually care about?
I threw a link to that doc into the agenda for this meeting, but you can also find it on the mailing list archives under multi-network models is the thread.
Cool.
And also Ed and Corral, if you have like slides or docs or something like that, could you post a link to those in the agenda doc for this meeting? I've added some items for the next meeting at the top, so just put your links underneath your item.
Yeah, I will add it now, yeah.
Okay, thanks guys.
Yeah, I'm delighted too.
All right, excellent.
Thanks,
Okay,
everyone.
Unless anybody has anything pressing, that is it for today. See you all in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.